Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Bennett here for the Music, Medicine, and Machines Learn Up here based out of DC and Virginia. We like to meet up with our fellow members to talk about machine learning, medicine, and music. And so I am super excited here to have JR, the Chief Growth Officer from TISTA, who's been in healthcare as well as music for a good number of years. And I am super excited to talk with JR today about some of his background. So JR, could you talk a little bit about your background around healthcare and data analytics?
Yeah, sure. So thanks, Laura, for inviting me to be a participant. So I'm JR Glass. I'm the Chief Growth Officer here at TISTA Science and Technology Corporation. I've been in federal healthcare consulting and IT for about 25 years now. My background has been primarily supporting my client at the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. And I kind of got into this line of business just by accident. It was Y2K, was the crisis du jour back in 98, 99. And what was previously, CMS was previously called the Healthcare Financing Administration. And it just so happened that my background while I was going to college was working in a laboratory back office where I was, doing a lot of data entry and filling out HCFA claim forms. So when Y2K came out, companies were hiring for HCFA to come in and help them with Y2K. And it was my first job out of college. And I spent New Year's Eve 2000 in the war room at the headquarters of CMS with their senior leadership, the CIO, was playing Trivial Pursuit. It was the biggest non-event of the decade. And I think that was because of the hard work that folks put in to remediate all of the systems. But it introduced me into the world of federal healthcare IT consulting. And I've been supporting CMS and other federal clients ever since.
That's pretty cool. I mean, so you've really been around for a long time and you've seen CMS kind of go through this evolution in terms of the technologies, the three-tier zone architecture, waterfall to agile, and maybe just share a little bit on your perspective on this evolution that CMS has taken from a technology perspective.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great observation. And I have been very lucky professionally in my career to have been involved in some of the major initiatives that the agency has been involved in undertaking. It started for me first on Y2K, and then later I helped them implement the Part D prescription drug benefit, and after that helped them implement the Affordable Care Act. And HCFA as an agency, I think, has evolved in its mission. Right, when it was the Healthcare Financing Administration, it was essentially a large payer of claims, an insurance company, an intermediary, if you will, that was responsible for just paying claims, right? And over time, they have amassed such a treasure trove of data and information that they're starting to realize the potential that sitting on all that information has. Particularly, we've seen an evolution in their technology that is commensurate with the need to get off of old legacy programs like COBOL, mainframe, DB2 type of technologies that are just not supported in the market of individuals like graduating colleges. So there is a hard competition to convince 65-year-old plus COBOL programmers not to retire. So the agency recognizes that they need to have modern technologies just for a sustainability perspective, but also as they transition having a larger role in the healthcare industry. I think the Affordable Care Act really changed the dynamic where now Medicare, CMS, even though you're dealing with a population that are not Medicare beneficiaries, but because CMS is responsible for the Affordable Care Act's implementation, they have an outsized influence in the healthcare IT industry. And in order to keep pace with all of these changes, they really needed to upgrade their technology, both from a core technology and then how they approach technology in terms of modern application development processes agile, DevSecOps, continuous integration, continuous delivery. And as a result of the failure of the launch of healthcare.gov, the U.S. Digital Services was born out of Medicare, and that agency has taken the forefront, if you will, in terms of modernizing their legacy systems to newer technologies.
Yeah, it's neat that you mentioned that. I mean, CMS has really changed a lot in the last 10 years, and due to your exposure to the agency, you've seen a massive change. But they also have massive amounts of data. I mean, they have 140 million plus beneficiaries. They're mandated and responsible for over 1 billion claims annually. The number's a lot higher now. They have all this great data on their beneficiaries. What do you think CMS wants to do with this data?
You know, that's a great question. So I think, first of all, for the agency, they needed to understand what data they did have and then start organizing and categorizing the data in such a way that it would be useful to researchers and policymakers, right? So first it was collect the data, put it in a standard format and a repository where folks could get it, and then validate that the data is accurate, because I think they have been hesitant in some regards to unleash some of the data without understanding the transformations that the data has gone through. So I think they spent a good portion of the last decade getting that confidence in the data and its lineage, and now it's ready for different use, right? There's a lot of policy researchers that are very interested in getting their hands on some of the data. CMS has been very good about releasing data sets to the public and the researchers, but I think there's so much untapped potential, right? They're sitting on so much data that it's going to be interesting to see what the data starts to reveal, right? And I think there are a lot of different researchers that want to, some come in, you know, with very, I guess, regimented ideas of theories that they want to test out based on what the data says. And then there are other folks, data scientists, that say, for example, let's look at some claims data. Let's run those through some analytic engines and tell us what the analysis identifies as, you know, outliers from just standard deviations. So I think that there's a lot of people chomping at the bit to get to that data. I think, you know, particularly in these times of COVID, the pandemic has certainly raised the specter of, you know, how can we more quickly turn data into action, right? And I think there's going to be a very much concerted effort to take the data that they've got and make it actionable and implement policy that's going to affect the lives of the Medicare beneficiaries and the Medicaid beneficiaries. So I know that's a vague answer, but there's so much data that they're sitting on that they just don't know what the data could tell them. They're starting to get a sense for that. And I think we're going to see a lot more come as a result of that in the near future.
Yeah. So we have a fair amount of researchers in our meetup groups and a fair amount of startups. And, you know, they're probably like, oh my goodness, there's all this data. How do I get access? What would be your advice to someone in our meetup group and gaining access to this data? What would you tell them to do?
Well, that's a great question. You know, CMS has multiple systems and multiple data, and it's not easy for individuals to access those data without a contractual relationship with the organization. So I would say to those individuals, you know, as the government releases data sets, those data sets are publicly available. You can go to data.gov and some other publicly available websites where CMS is publishing those data sets. Those are out there. They're available to researchers and entrepreneurs to take that data to develop solutions and systems that support end users of the stakeholders of the data. So that's one way that an individual or an individual researcher could access CMS data. The real meat of the other data, you really need to have a contractual relationship with the organization and sign the data use agreements. But there are multiple major data repositories. The CMS Chronic Conditions Warehouse is one that is very good for research and data analytics. There's the CMS's Integrated Data Repository. There are 1PI environments. I know TISTA, we're very blessed to have the responsibility for their TMSIS program. We're collecting 1.2 petabytes of data that we're storing in AWS from every state Medicaid agency. So, we're creating a very large repository of data on those beneficiaries. So, over time, researchers will be able to access this information and, to bring to bear policy changes and solutions that will be able to have a positive impact on folks' lives.
Yeah, that's a great place for folks to start. I think you're right. All of this information is available at GitHub. Is another platform I've heard where CMS is openly sharing code and encouraging developers and researchers to get involved there. So I think we open the door and folks can check these resources out. So I'd like to pivot to something more fun. I know you're a vocalist and I know you're an accomplished vocalist, so to speak, and a storyteller, and would love to hear, I think our audience would love to hear a little bit more about JR behind the office hours, and what do you like to do in your spare time musically?
Oh, wow. That's a loaded question. And, it's funny, when you're in a band, people always say, oh, you're in a band, I'm going to come see you play. And I'm like, yeah. I have been fortunate to have been in the music scene, mostly underground, punk rock, hardcore, heavy metal kind of music for about 30 years. I started out being a show promoter, DIY type concerts in churches and VFW halls in my late teenage years. And when I was asked to join a band almost 30 years ago, we never thought we would play anywhere outside of our friend's mother's basement where we practiced, and I've been fortunate to have put out several records and toured Japan a couple times, all over Europe multiple times. So, and I'm fortunate that I have a very loving wife who is supportive of me, still spending some of my vacation time, to go out and play concerts. And, it's been neat for me, as a professional, to still have a professional career and still be able to take 2 weeks off in the summer to go tour Europe for, playing festivals and concerts. So I won't get into too many specifics because I'm afraid that people are going to start looking up my band. And why would I ever want to do business with this guy? He plays such crappy music. So, but it's been really wonderful.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking if we ever do karaoke, we could do B-52's Love Shack. You'll do the male vocals, I'll do the female vocals. How about that?
Count me in. I love the B-52s, but outside of my band, you probably wouldn't want to hear my voice. You probably wouldn't want to hear it with my band either, to be honest with you. I'm not much of a singer. That's why I say I'm a vocalist. I'm the front man that yells and screams and growls. I think that's about it. So.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think we'll just end on this. I know when we were doing our prep about a week ago, we were talking about the impact of music and tone and tonality in the voice on how it can be healing for individuals. I know you were sharing some stuff about NIH. Do you mind just sharing a little bit about some of the things you came across in your research on the voice and how that could be healing for individuals?
Yeah, so as we explore music, professional circumstance, you never, we're all in our shirts and ties or whatever, and everybody likes music and listens, but you never really, you don't know what people do in their spare time. And at TISTA, I was very blessed to find that I had some really talented, not only just people professionally, but we're also talented musicians. And one of my colleagues plays classical Indian flute, and he shared his CD with me and other members of the community. And he said, "Hey, not only do I play this music, it's all based on research from NIH." And I was like, I want to really learn about this music. And he studied, the ancient Indian chant of Om. It's a very common invocation in Hinduism and other things. But there are professional studies that trace the sound pattern of the Om chanting, and he came up with these particular sound waves. And he wrote a whole record of traditional Indian flute music that's based on obtaining the same waves that the research showed that the Om people, the Om chanting of Om, what the positive effects that has on your serotonin levels. And it was really interesting to see that not only did he create this really neat piece of music that's, when I listen to it, I put it in the background as I'm like doing my work in the day, and it really does relax you. And it was so interesting to see how he had combined his talent for music with his talent and love for research and study, and created this really moving piece of music that was based on science. And I could actually feel it making me more relaxed. And I was like, wow, that was really, really neat. But, you know, it's very interesting to see, you know, some of the, what I'll call older cultures in our world have these approaches to like spirituality, chanting, think things like acupuncture, things that in the Western culture we're really starting to now look at from a scientific perspective, but have often been brushed off as, that's just, you know, culturally insignificant. It's not based on science. And they're starting to turn their attention and look at these things in science, because these, you know, older cultures and civilizations have used these for centuries, and they didn't have the benefit of the rigorous scientific research that we do. And it's interesting to see it being applied to look at things like acupuncture, acupressure, you know, the chanting of Om. So it's been neat to see that evolution, you know, of science and culture. And I know I'm a bit rambling here. I don't know if that answered your question, but I've certainly found it to be very interesting with my colleagues.
Well, we certainly would like to talk to him. I mean, I think he's really getting deep in the science, NIH, and the music. I certainly would like to have him added to our roster for next interviews. And I think you did answer our question, because, you know, we're centered around medicine and music and healthcare. And I think, you know, we're always going to come back to that perennial question, is how music is good for the soul. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so excited to be a co-organizer with Donna Fernandez on this, because again, you know, we're always so professional, and when we come to these networking events, we're always saying, oh, hey, I work for X, this is what I do. And we're always asking those questions, and being able to connect on something that's more human and artistic and doesn't necessarily have words. I think it can help us build a different community within this community we have at large. So I appreciate your time, and I think you gave a really great overview of CMS and its data initiatives and how people can get more involved.
Oh, well, thank you. And, you know, obviously I've known you and Donna for some time, but when I saw that you were putting together the Music, Medicine, and Machines, I thought, wow, that's something that's really of interest. And I know I'm not the only person in industry that saw that and was like, wow, this is a great idea. So I thank you for allowing me to be a part of it, you know, and I look forward to continuing and, you know, participating in the meetups. And if anyone has any questions, as long as it doesn't involve me playing my music for you, I'm happy to engage in those discussions. But thank you. This has been very interesting. I really like what you all are trying to do to bring this larger community together. So again, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Yeah, not a problem. And eventually we'll get back into, you know, in-person events, you know, provided, you know, things keep downward trending in a positive direction, then we'll be able to get there faster. So, but until then, we'll continue to create great content videos with you and other folks. So thanks everybody for tuning in. We appreciate it.